Hello and welcome to the Podquest of Bread. My name is Henry Conley, and since this is the first new episode of the Podquest of Bread going live, since I took the break that I described over on Voice of Liberty, I just wanted to take a moment to thank everybody that's stuck around the page and whoever happens to watch this video. To kind of give an idea what the Podquest of Bread is going to be doing for those that haven't caught the two videos that I've put out so far, the Podquest of Bread is going to be focused on building leftist society, building leftist coalitions, and setting the groundworks that we need to set in order to move towards the true leftist dream world that we seek to see. And as such, I'll be doing live interviews here and there with activists, with leftist candidates, and really discussing how we can build this true left unity that we really want to see. And of course, to start this off, I couldn't think of anybody better than my friend Logan Fleckenstein, and we are going to bring him on the stream right now. Hey,
hello.
Logan.
Hello.
Welcome to the podcast.
I don't want to be that guy, but it's just so you know, it is Fleckenstein. But just
Fleckenstein, my apologies.
No, you're good. It's a common mistake. I understand. What's my last? It's better than what the kids at school used to call me. They always used to call me Frankenstein. So you know.
Yeah, you gotta love it.
Right.
So, Logan, I went back and forth what we would talk about, tried to think about things to talk about, and I said, screw it, we're just going to punt on this one and just have some fun with it. Because you have so many different things that we could talk about that you've done. You as an activist and a leftist, your journey to this side of the political spectrum has been one that is one that would be very interesting for viewers to learn and maybe could open the eyes of those that are, bordering on the fence and not sure if they really are on the right side of things. And, to start it off, I guess the best way to start is, I started out as a Republican. I started out staunch conservative Republican. Always questioned whether I really belonged there, though, because I didn't have a lot of conservative leanings. And sure enough, here I am about 5 years later, and I'm entrenched in the left in a way that I never thought I would be. And allied with people on the left that when I entered the Libertarian Party, I never thought I would even be allied with. So how did you come to the left? What's your journey? Let's talk about that.
Oh, let's do the full version. All right. So actually it's funny because so I was also like you. I was a Republican, fairly conservative, maybe not too much socially, but definitely, I guess, fiscally conservative, as that talking point. I believed in that talking point that, I thought the free markets and blah, 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 that was the way to freedom. In fact, as a fun note for your viewers, so Fred Upton, for example, he's one of the Republicans who actually voted for impeachment of Trump. He was one of the guys that I actually used to campaign for. Like I lived in that area in Allegan County where he's the representative of, and he was actually one of the guys I had. I think it was right around when I don't think it was his first time running, but like it was close to that. And I had campaigned for him. He was one of the guys I campaigned for back in the day. So that's to show you kind of where I was at. The main guy I was going with was his name was Fulton Sheen. He was a state rep, but yeah, and he actually years later I found out he was like more of a Ron Paul Republican. But at the time I didn't know about Ron Paul or libertarianism or anything like that. I just thought that the Republicans were the way to go. I was just on Team Republican, and I was at the time. It's funny enough, I was a teenager, so most people during their teenage years, that's when they're supposed to be like the rebellious, anarchist, leftist type person, and blah blah blah. No, not me. I was a religious Catholic. I was a good old Republican. All that stuff. That's where I started at. And as I got older, that's when I started going more towards the left. And at first it was really libertarianism, like the right wing libertarianism. And it was 2012, Ron Paul, and because Bush had left me, kind of like, come on, man. I was like, really? And I just got very disillusioned with the Republican Party. Especially the big thing was a lot of the social stuff really was what got me away from it. Like, this, because I thought at the time, for example, that civil unions were like, okay, it's just a marriage, but with a different name. What's the harm? What's the foul? I didn't find out till later, like, no, there's actual different, there's actual differences legality wise at the time between that. And I found that atrocious. And I was like, even as a religious person, I was just like, this doesn't seem right. And plus, I had lost my faith. And that was one of the things that kind of got me away from the Republican Party because, quite frankly, it's pretty hard to be non-religious and be Republican. Like, there's people who do it, but like, it's not an easy road. And so that's one of the things that got me away from the Republican Party. And I was just like in this mindset, well, I'm socially, I'm a liberal, but I'm fiscally a conservative. And so I was like very lost and disillusioned until, like I said, 2012, when, I found out about Ron Paul. Well, I knew about him in 2008, but I thought he was naive at that point. I was just like, you're too naive. John McCain is way more realistic. Like, that was my mindset. Like, that was the mindset I had at that point. But then, 2012 came around and heard him talk. And the more I heard him talk, the more I'm like, this is my guy. This is my homie. Like, I found it. Like, I finally found it, the thing. Like, what is this, libertarianism? And I found out, like, there's a whole ideology of this? And so then after that, I just kept investigating and digging and found out about the Libertarian Party and then, Gary Johnson, who I still actually, even despite what I am now, like, I still have respect for the man. I actually got to meet him.
Gary's what brought me here, to the party. That's where my start is. So I have a little bit of respect there.
Yeah. Like, and even to this day, I don't know, there's still, like, I met him in 2016 and he's just such a chill, nice guy. Like, aside from the ideology, like, he was a dude. I was just like, man, I'd smoke weed with this dude and chill with him and talk about life, like, and to me, like, that's, like, yeah, we're anarchists and all, but like, if we're going to have people in government, that's the sort of people you want. You know what I mean? Like, someone that you feel like you can, like, have that sort of deep human connection with. So, like, I was definitely, especially in retrospect, I mean, we definitely have to be happy that he beat a lot of the people that he did, especially like your Austin Petersons and all those people. Like, you gotta be happy he did that. Like,
oh, definitely, without a doubt.
Oh yeah, without a doubt. But yeah, so like I said, but anyways, like, so like, I found out about Ron Paul, and then that whole joke about, like, the difference between an anarchist and a minarchist is like 6 months. For me, it was less than that. It was like probably 4 months. And I found, and what really actually the straw that broke the camel's back, fun fact was a video of it was like an animated drawing thing of Machinery of Freedom, like a summary of that by David Freeman. Well, David Freeman didn't do the video, but obviously he was the idea behind that, and that was what got me to thinking, like, oh snap, you can have a stateless society. This thing is possible. And then I was like, okay. I'm, at the time I thought I was an anarchist. Really, I was an anarcho-capitalist, which we both know is contradictory, right? But from there, I still started being driven further and further left. A lot of it was admittedly kind of being pushed away by still the social conservatism that I had seen in the Republican Party that I was like, I reject this. I've seen a lot of that even amongst these circles. And so that was one of the things that got me further and further pushed towards the left was that. But, I also then, started investigating a little bit. Henry David Thoreau, for example, he was one of the first just like anarcho-capitalist anarchists that was like, oh, this guy's really speaking a lot of wisdom, civil disobedience. I still live by that to this day. Like, that's an important piece of work. Like, if you haven't checked out civil disobedience, what's a fun fact about that even? MLK was even inspired by that. A lot of people don't know this. Yeah, but MLK was even inspired by Henry David Thoreau's civil disobedience. So just to kind of show, like, it is an important piece of work. It's literally...
It's fundamental.
Yeah. Like, you got to respect the man. And plus, Walden is, even aside from that, I found to be a fascinating piece of work. But yeah, like, so I like I said, I was being pushed, by the right. But also, I did start seeing that allure. There's that allure of the left, and there's a reason for that because the left has, the compassion,
Yes.
and like this is something that the right always has to constantly fight is trying to explain away why why the left seems more compassionate but isn't. Like that's a constant battle they always got to do. And
Exactly.
I was just being pushed and pushed. And in fact, I remember I even I had a Facebook status thing I saw the other day that I had done like years ago, where I was already describing myself as a left libertarian. I think it was 2017, but realistically, I still wasn't quite there because I was still a capitalist. And in my mind, if you support a form of capitalism, maybe with the exception of like a co-op capitalism, like the super capitalism, obviously with the exception of that, if you support like just capitalism in any form other than that, in my mind, you're what I would call right-wing libertarian.
Yeah.
And the left-wing libertarian is the anti-capitalist, pro-socialist, pro-communism, whatever, anarchist libertarian. Yeah, against the state. And so like I said, I got that push, and then two big moments that are pretty recent in my life that finally have gotten me to the point where I'm like, I'm done. I'm done with capitalism. I'm done defending this. I'm no longer of that club. One was a couple years ago now. I got to go to China and teach English for a year. In fact, that's where I got my dog that, was my profile picture, Noelle. In fact, I adopted her a couple of days before Christmas.
Okay.
Like I had been only there for like a month and a half at that point. I saw her like a couple weeks, the week, I think the week of or like the next week after me having been in China. And I had no plans of adopting a dog or anything like that. Like that was the last thing on my mind. In fact, I remember even joking about like adopt an animal while I'm in China. That's the silliest thing. Like I remember literally having that discussion with like my family and like being like, that's so silly. Why would I do that? And then that's exactly what's ended up happening.
Good company.
Yeah. And it was just one of those, like, it was one of those moments where like you feel like destiny or the universe or whatever, whether you believe in that, all that sort of stuff or not, like it's one of those moments where like it seemed like the stars just aligned, and it was like I remember like having my mom's her voice in my head, just being like, "You're going to adopt that dog. This is your dog now. Like this is just happened.
Yours. That is yours."
Yeah. So I remember even having called and what's funny is that this dog, she ran into the school that I was teaching at. She actually ran in there, and the students were like all scared and like, "Oh my god, dog!" And so like I actually was the one that got that called her out because her and I had that previous connection, and I was going to adopt her the very first moment I saw her, but I was like, I don't know if this is someone's dog or not. Like I'm new to the culture. I don't know how to treat like I fresh off the boat. So I was just like, if I see her around again and have a suspicion that she really is a stray, then yes, I would adopt her. That was my mindset. That's what happened a couple of days before Christmas, and that's when I was like, fine, I'm going to adopt this dog. Luckily, my bosses, they happen to be the sort of people that on the side, they just rescue animals all the time. They're like they're pretty wealthy in China, like owning a school and owning other businesses and stuff. But this is just one of their side hobbies is that they have apartments and stuff full of full of cats, especially and they have like some dogs and stuff too that they've rescued. So they already were familiar. They're like, hey, we got a vet for you and everything that you can go to, blah blah blah. And so yeah, it worked out really conveniently. And so that's why I call her Noelle, by the way, is because of when I adopted her.
Oh, that is a good name.
Right? I thought so too. Yeah. So my baby girl Noelle. She served as, actually funny enough, she ended up serving as like a legitimate support animal. Like I would have left China there a lot sooner because I had a mental breakdown and all this stuff. And yeah, she kept me through it. She kept me through that year, through the end of that contract. And in fact, I had the opportunity to spend the holidays here and then go back to China. Like I was, like I had that, like they gave me like, well, okay, you can like go back for like, a couple months for like, Thanksgiving and Christmas and then come back. Of course, I was like, nah, I'm done. Of course, I didn't know this at the time because no one did. Right around the corner was COVID.
Of course.
So, yeah, so like, it's a real good thing I didn't take that up because then that would have added some complications.
Definitely.
So, yeah. But yeah, that was actually then the other that was this was the straw that broke the camel's back for me for all this was COVID. Seeing the response to COVID by America and by even a lot of capitalist countries in general, like capitalism was, Richard Wolff talks about this, for example, like this is not just like a bug in the system. This is how the system worked out.
Exactly.
And as soon as I saw that, I'm like, oh no, and
it's like the TikTok. Oh no, oh no.
Exactly. I was like, man, it's it just was a big just epiphany moment. I'm like, dang, my intuitions and stuff were correct that I should have just been like abandoning capitalism a while ago, because even before then there's still like Emma Goldman, for example. I had read a little bit of her work and a little bit about her life and seeing, because I had respect for her. And I was just like, man, if only she had been a capitalist. That was my mindset. Like, literally was like, man, if she had been supporting capitalism, she'd be perfect. Now I'm like, obviously she is perfect. Like, I was in the wrong. She was in the right this entire time, Like, nah, Emma, you didn't need to change. I needed to change. So,
yeah.
So, like,
it's funny you bring up COVID, because the thing that I've been noticing with COVID is that has been opening so many people's eyes to how bad capitalism is. Mm-hmm. Especially people that live in capitalist societies. You look at them, there are so many people, and just go in the Twitterverse and look how many people are going, this is what fucking capitalism is? I'm done. Like, I'm struggling to afford rent. I'm struggling to be able to eat. This doesn't work. And it's opened so many eyes, which is so beautiful.
And that's the thing. That's the beauty. Like, if you're actually paying attention to the world and being intellectually and honest with yourself, that's the beauty. It's like these sort of events, they can do way more in converting people than any one person, with their opinions and their charisma or whatever could ever do. Like, these sort of events, these sort of like once in 100-year type events, they can truly change minds and change souls. And that's what happened with me. Yeah, like you said, like many other people, I think, too. I think I'm noticing it, even within the Libertarian Party, I'm noticing people who I saw before being a bit more, free markets and capitalism. At the very least, they've backed off that a bit. And they've even been more receptive and friendly towards like us social libs and whatnot. Because I remember when the social lib caucus first started. Yep. Even though I wasn't a libertarian socialist, I still had studied ideology, because that's one thing I did in university. I'm a poli-sci major with minors in philosophy and sociology, and and political ideologies are still to me very, very fascinating. I like learning about political ideologies, even as actually, especially ones I don't adhere to. Like, that's the thing. I'm interested in the ones I don't particularly adhere to.
Of course.
And so I remember like absorbing at least enough of this, of the anarchist left, libertarian socialist type perspective, to where I was of the mindset that like I still accepted them as libertarians. I still accepted them as freedom fighters. And so when I saw so many people just attack them, they're not real libertarians. Even my girlfriend at the time was like that too. She was like, they're not real libertarians. They're fake. They're not. They're just authoritarians.
Daily life of a leftist in this party.
Yeah. And I was like, no. That's baloney. I think that's why, for example, our mutual friend James. Even that's why he was, I think, vouched for me, because he even knew like that I was sticking up for these people. Even though actually with James, that was funny too. I can talk about him too, in that That was a funny situation because I was one of those people in the Michigan Libertarian Party at that time because I ran as a candidate in 2016 for state rep of the 60th district of Michigan.
Okay.
So, which is like Kalamazoo, which is like the city that's like between this, for those who don't know, it's geographically, it's between Chicago and Detroit. It's like almost directly between those two, Southwest Michigan. And I was one of those people who were like, all the people who hated James were all my friends. They were like all these like people in the higher up party who were like very right winged and whatnot. They were all my friends. I mean, I still like these people as people, but like they were, and they all hated James. They were telling me stories about James and all this stuff too. Like they did not like, especially the striptease things. They were like, ugh. And I was too at that time. I was like, yeah, you're right.
Our party's most famous C-SPAN moment right there.
Yes.
More famous than any of our presidential debates, more famous than anything is James stripping on stage.
Oh, yeah. I was at the time, I was like, fuck him for doing that. Yeah, he needs to be out of the party. Of course, since then, just for people to know, I think I even on Facebook, I apologized publicly and whatnot, and I made it, like, especially now, like, I was in the wrong. I was in the wrong for thinking that way. Like, what James did there actually was, he gave us a lot of clout.
Yes.
You can argue, people were like, oh, it's bad clout, blah, blah, blah. Like, not as much as you would think necessarily. People don't mind that stuff as much.
No, not at all.
They find it entertaining. They find it funny. Other than super religious, super socially conservative people who are just like those are the real fragile people. You know what I mean? Yep. Like those are the ones that get triggered and all this stuff. Like the stuff they blame the left for doing all the time. Nah, these are the people who really do that. You know what I mean? And I saw that, like I said, that's one of the things I saw early on too.
It's funny you bring that up about James too, because like when I said, I found myself on the left allied with people I didn't think I'd be allied with. James was one of those people where when I first came in this as an ANCAP, I didn't look at what he did as like bad, because as far as I've been concerned my whole life, what I learned was being audacious. I learned that was the term. I felt that way my entire life, but at the time I'm like, oh, I'll never be allied with that dude. I'm an ANCAP. Yeah.
What's funny is that I think the Audacious caucus had just started forming around the time, like I said, 2016. This is when I was running for office. They were just kind of forming, I think. And the Radical caucus was still around. And actually those were one of the people I had applied for for endorsement. Funny enough, they did not endorse me. You know the only caucus who did endorse me for that race?
Audacious?
No. Pragmatic caucus.
Okay,
Yes, the pragmatics. The pragmatic people loved me back in those. I was one of them. I was a pragmatic. I was one of those people, hardcore like that. Those were my crowd. Even though I was an anarchist, and I let them know, like, hey, I'm a radical. Like, I'll let you know, but I agree with you guys in terms of the methodology and the pragmatism of blah blah blah. I'm sympathetic to I understand where they're coming from like a poli-sci point of view. I think the problem is that they just forget the human element in things. You know what I mean? Like they forget that people just want to have fun. People want to have candidates and people they can have fun with and can connect with on a human basis. And that's one of the things about, like with James, for example, that I respect so much is that he puts himself out there. He puts himself out there, heart and soul. Like James is James. What you see is what you get. And people respect that. They respect that and love that so much. And that's why now James I love and admire, respect James. I think he's
I know James for why I'm here, on this podcast, talking with you, mm-hmm. He's among the people that, lassoed my ass and drugged me over to the left, At first I was kicking and screaming because I'm sitting there like culture shocked, like going, what am I supporting over here, suddenly, but
like, why am I here, right? Yeah,
Wait
like
a
I mean,
second,
that was
I'm a
one that,
socialist? Hold on, I was told by the Red Scare propaganda that's bad.
yeah, exactly, right? Yeah, exactly. And for me, it was just like, actually, for me, a lot of what I had the conflict with was what I was being told by, like, like the Mises Caucus and Chicago school folks, and by these capitalists. I was being told one thing by them, and on the other hand, though, I was being told these other things by my university education. Like I was being told, like, I saw, like, for example, the legitimacy in Marx from a
Yep.
sociological point of view. I saw that, like if you study sociology, I think in any real way, and don't come out of it at least respecting what Marx did, at least not acknowledging his work and his contribution. Like you could, like I said, you can have your disagreements with Marx. I still do, obviously. I think as an anarchist, I do. Like I think there's some flaws in the Marxist thinking, but although I think a lot of modern day Marxists have fixed that. Like Richard Wolff's, like they've, unlike a lot of these capitalists, they actually look at their past and they're like, oh, this is what we did wrong.
That's not the best thing right there. We need to fix that.
Yeah, exactly. These are open and honest people, who acknowledge the flaws of the past. They acknowledge the flaws of the like. You don't find other than your Tankies and other than like your like authoritarian left type people.
Yep.
You don't find these people being like, yes, USSR was perfect. It was perfect in every way. We love the USSR. That is our country. You don't find them saying that about China. You know what I mean?
It's funny you say that. It's funny you say that about Tankies because, like, anybody that knows me knows that last year, right after the convention, pretty much for the Libertarian Party, I took a pretty decent sized break away from the party in general, and found myself in a lot of leftist circles. And no one on the left has ever scared me as much as Tankies. I mean, shit. I had one trying to tell me how great North Korea is, and I'm going, whoa there. Listen, I understand propaganda and shit, but whoa there.
Yeah, there's only so much propaganda can do. Propaganda is a powerful tool. I was just thinking about this even before we came on. Like, yeah, like propaganda, like we all can fall victim to propaganda. No one, like, it is very hard to immune yourself from propaganda. Even the most, just think about your most intelligent person ever. They probably fell for propaganda at some point.
Without a doubt.
Like, everyone falls for propaganda. This is like, it is a powerful, powerful thing that if you think you're immune to it, you're just kidding yourself. And that's
just think about the most powerful propaganda in the United States. The most powerful propaganda in the United States is being told that the Democrats are left, Republicans are right, and that they are diametrically opposed to each other, and one will work for you and the other won't. It's the most powerful propaganda tool in the United States, and it's existed for 60 plus years.
Exactly. And like, even with this, the division within our country right now, like, yeah, like there are certain issues for sure Republicans and Democrats diametrically oppose each other, even more so than before. For example, abortion. Like, that one has become an issue where it is clear each party has a side and they are supporting it. By the way, I think, I'm pro-choice, and that's one of the things. I mean, I get, like, for example, like, I understand, like, if you're religious, especially like a Catholic, or, you're one of these religions who believes life begins at conception. Yeah, I can understand why you're pro-life. Like, I'm not going to sit here and pretend like, well, why would you do that? Like, why would you want to have people interfere with people's other lives? No, because you literally believe lives are being killed. You know what I mean? Yeah. Like, it'd be kind of weird if you weren't so aggressive about it. You know what I mean? Like, it would be weird. Like, if you're like, oh yeah, I believe you're killing a baby, but whatever. No, that's weird.
Well, and the other thing is, you can be pro-life personally, while being pro-choice for everyone else. That's the thing people fail at on both sides. I mean, it just look at the hardline Democrats. Hardline Democrats.
See, here's the thing. Like, yeah, you can be, but I feel like that's kind of weird. Like, that's a really weird position to take. Like, you really believe, like, yeah, abortion is murder, but then you let other people do it. You know what I mean? Like, so that's why I'm
yeah, and I can get where you're coming from there.
Yeah, I'm sympathetic. Like, I think they're wrong. I ultimately think they're wrong because, especially because as a candidate, for example, I even ran as like, at some point it's murder, you know, and we can discuss when it is. That was essentially what I did. Like, I acknowledge, like, and I still feel this way. Like, at some point it is murder. At some point it is like a developed thing that we can call a human life. Yeah. My argument for before then is that it's just prevention. It's the same as like killing a seed before it gets to grow. It's not even really technically killing; it's preventing, which is like it's equivalent to me of wearing a condom while you're having sex. Essentially, it's same. It's the same thing. Like but at some point, So at some point, it's just like prevention. We all acknowledge, except for Catholics, that that's okay. But then at some point moving forward, that's a life. That's murder. You can't do it. I'm sorry. Like, and that's why I'm looking forward to the day though when we can have like artificial wombs. Because once that happens, that's going to change the game. Then you can make. That's why I don't get why Republicans don't just try to like fund the science for that and get that going as quickly as possible. Because as soon as you have that, then you can't argue against. I mean, you can't argue for abortion anymore. You just can't do it unless it's like a real, I guess, real life or death situation, and that has to happen now. You know what I mean? Yeah. Like, unless it's those exceptionary cases. Once you get artificial wombs,
I've always taken a straight line approach on it. I ain't growing a baby in me. I ain't making an opinion on it. Like me,
yeah. I agree with that. Like on principle too. I agree with that too. Like especially like if I was.
I'd rather step aside in forming legislation and go, okay, you're a female congressman, you're a female congresswoman. You guys figure out that legislation. I'll just vote on whatever you guys say.
No, I agree. Yeah. Oh, especially the one too. Another one people always were like, well. I was like, well, exception of rape, but then some people would even argue against that and say like, well, the baby didn't do anything wrong, so why are you taking it out on the baby? Why are you killing the baby and punishing it for something that someone else did wrong? And I'm like, are you really going to tell a woman who's just been raped, trigger warning, and all that, but like. Are you really going to warn someone who's just gone through that experience, who's now pregnant? Are you really going to tell them like, oh, you gotta carry that baby to term? Like, are you going to tell them that?
Imagine the mental effects. Oh my god.
Yeah, no, I'm not going to tell them that. No, I'm just like, yeah, please, yeah, do whatever you need to do to get, to help you move forward with life.
Exactly.
Do what you need to, because I can't imagine what that's like. That is hell. That is a fresh hell, just beyond comprehension and words. So I'm sympathetic. You can't help but be sympathetic to that.
Absolutely.
That was another thing. Yeah, feminism definitely, I think, is one of the things that been pushed me left, because right-wing feminism is just a joke. it's a joke.
That's really right, because when you look at so. It was funny. We were just, in our little secret group chat, we were just doing those tests that were kind of showing us what we agree with and all that stuff. Anarcho-feminism. I was like, what the hell is this? And I started looking into it. I went, oh, okay, that's what I've agreed on with women's rights for the longest time.
Oh,
okay.
Yeah.
Got it. Makes sense now.
Oh, yeah. Like Emma Goldman she was one of those early pioneers in anarcho-feminists. That's why it got me initially into her before becoming a lefty, was because I've always considered, for a while, I've considered myself a feminist. Like I believe in the feminist cause. Yeah. Especially being a mama's boy and whatnot, like it's very easy to fall. I mean, like I've been raised around strong, independent women all my life. For example, so one thing that not everyone knows about, most people know about me. Like if you know anything about me, you know that I am autistic, and I was diagnosed at 18 months old. And when they diagnosed me, like they went through the whole list and they're like, oh, yep, he's got that, he's got that, he's got that, he's got, like they check marked everything. And they're like, okay. They told my mom, like, he's never going to talk. He's never going to have an imagination. He's never going to have friends. He's going to live in adult assisted care for the rest of his life. That's what the doctors told my mom. I was the worst, like you know that worst case scenario type autistic people that you see. That was supposed to be me. I'm not even supposed to talk. Like the fact that I'm able to talk is like defying the whole like autism thing.
Holy shit! Wow.
Yeah. Like I wasn't like one of these people who has just like had like Asperger's or whatever, or light autism, whatever you want to call it. No, I was like as autistic as you get. And the person that helped me, her name's Maureen Lewandowski. She was a teacher, and she got me out of. She essentially trained me through like. Really, what I found out later is behavioral psychology, essentially. Like, she essentially used behavioral psychology with me to get me out of that. Like, for example, one of the things autistic people we do is we look away. We don't look people straight in the eye. And she would, for example, whenever I would do that, she would grab my head and be like, look at me. She had a few times she had to wrestle me to the ground because of other various things. I was a biter and a claw and all this, too. Like, that was pretty bad. But she, and she is another example of one of these strong women. I mean, she has several different master's degrees and random stuff, all sorts of random stuff. She has like literally several different master's degrees. She is a smart, capable, strong woman. And so, like I said, I was raised and around strong women all my life from the get-go. So, like, I think that's one of the reasons why, I mean, I know like for example, a lot of dudes are typically threatened by strong women. That's just a reality we live in this society right now.
Oh, yeah.
Like, a lot of guys will make defense like, oh, no, I'm cool with it. No, you're threatened by it. Like most dudes are.
The moment, you got those guys that make that, well, I'm all good with it. And then the moment like a woman speaks up or shows how strong she is, all of a sudden they're doing everything they can to get her to shut up. And
exactly.
and you and I share a similar background on that, where we were raised by a strong, independent woman. I was raised by my grandmother, and all the way up until the time that she passed when I was 10, she was like the foundation. She did not let any dude do anything for her. We had this live-in caretaker, and she'd rip the tools out of his hand and show him how to freaking do it. So,
that's what's up.
That kind of makes sense where we come into this, and that's unbelievable.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. And I think actually that's a very foundational thing especially for women. If you're raising boys, like, make sure you're strong. Make sure you show them the example early on of what it is to be a woman in that way.
Oh, yeah.
A strong, independent woman. Not to try to do too much, gender, stuff, because like I'm ultimately up the camp that gender in of itself is silly. It's ultimately kind of a silly concept.
Well, and that's what we always talk about, on the left, especially with GSM rights, is how gender is a social construct, which is something that you have these two people. You have the right wingers that just can't understand that. Then you have the right wingers that took sociology and understand that, but don't want to acknowledge it. And then you got us on the left. It's like, it's a social construct. It's nothing related to your biology.
We don't it's so funny how many of these conservatives don't understand this idea of having only two genders. That's not normal. That's a very odd thing. It's like most societies don't just have two genders. Especially historically. Like, no, that's just not a thing. It's normally much more nuanced and much more complicated. Like you can get cultures, with hundreds of different, genders.
And within a society, so you have a nation, and then within sections of that nation, the definition of gender varies there too. Not like here in the United States, where it's like they want us to have it blanket across the United States. You're a guy or a girl. It's like what are we doing here? What are we trying to do here? But it's that puritanical nature of this country, which
that's the thing people don't realize. Yeah, most people don't realize how much that Puritanism has seeped into everything in our lives. It still impacts us to this day. I mean, that's how it is how, for example, you had these, fascists, like outright fascists, not like exaggeratory, like, oh, they're conservatives, but I'm a lefty, so I'm just going to call them fascists. No, I mean actual
quite literally brown shirts.
Yes, quite literally brown shirts, being able to tell us these, the Red Scare lies, and the big one too, the war on drugs. And people don't that was propagated on by fascists, like actual.
Exactly. Something else I wanted to touch on here, and it's something that I found fascinating about you as an activist, where you exist on within leftist culture and everything, is you spent time in China, and I mean, how did you? I mean, I guess briefly, how'd that come about? But beyond that, where in China were you, and what did you learn about that? How has being there for the time that you were impacted you as a leftist? Because Chinese society is one that's very interesting. It's one of both extreme state control, but also one where there is some interesting aspects.
There's a mafia style there, and I'll explain a little bit more what I mean by that. But so initially, how I got there is funny enough. It's because, ironically enough, of libertarianism, because I have a friend who his job at the time is he was a recruiter. He would recruit English teachers to all these different schools in China, and because he actually happened to live in China for some odd years, and he's fluent in Chinese. He even has a Chinese wife and kid, and so he knows what's up with that culture, and he actually had presented me with this opportunity years ago, but I was just like, no. And then he had presented me with it again, but at the time I was engaged to, and all this. And so I was like, no, I want to focus on that. And then, but her and I didn't work out. And after that, then he was presented to me again. And I was like, well, really don't have any excuses now. And this, okay, fine. And so he since this is what he does, he was able to, and he knows me because him and I have been friends since university, because him and I met in a libertarian group. He was trying to start up a libertarian group, and I was like, oh, libertarian group, other libertarians, yay! And so, met him and some other people, and so that him and I had known each other for years at that point. And so he knew me really well and kind of knew what was up with my life and what my preferences were in terms of living locations and stuff. So he was able to help set me up with a school in Shangrao. It's the name of the city that I lived in, Shangrao, China. It's, I would say, about, by bullet train, it's about 8 hours southwest of Shanghai.
Okay.
As kind of a reference point, is in the Jiangxi province. I mean, for anyone who might know what that is, they're like, oh, okay. But so it's pretty, I would say it's like, it's South China, a little bit lower than mid China, but so South China. The humidity there was crazy. Like you talk about, most days, you could have 99 whatever percent humidity. Literally, especially during this hot months. So speaking of, during the hot months. So for example, one of the funny things about China, like you say, it was authoritarian. And so one of the things, they have a law where if it gets, essentially above about 104 degrees or so Fahrenheit, about 40 degrees Celsius, if it gets above that temperature, they're supposed to be like, all right, no work. Everyone stay home because it's too hot. But these motherfuckers literally will lie about the weather They will say, no, it's not that. It's like 90 degrees, so you're still within the periphery, so go work. Like, these motherfuckers will lie about that shit.
Wow.
And see, and so like, so one of the things about China that made me a leftist is not that like, oh, it's this grand, perfect communist paradise, and I was just like, oh, it's perfect, and now I'm a leftist. Quite on the contrary. It's the fact that it is literally a mafia capitalist system. And I saw this firsthand. I saw the incompetence of people because it was literally like, you don't get government jobs from like being able to be good at your job. No, yeah. Why would you do that? No sort of merits. You literally, it's just through knowing people and through connections. And people might be like, well, isn't that a reason to be skeptical of the government? Which I'm like, yes, it is. But the fact is I saw how intertwined the markets, the capitalism was with the state. It was literally just favoritism of like certain people got to follow certain rules, or had to follow certain rules, I should say, and others did not, simply because of they just bribe people.
Yep.
They bribe people. They just bribe people, and they just it's literally, like I said, pretty much mafia style. Think of how the mafia runs. And that's pretty much how China, especially in these, I should say, especially in the smaller cities like I was at, because Shangrao, for example, is, even if it's 6 million people live there, which is small for a Chinese city.
Yeah.
So mind you, it has the same population density as Grand Rapids, Michigan. I don't know if you're familiar with Grand Rapids.
Not all that familiar.
Well, it's a city of like 200,000 people. And so that city, yeah, but Shangrao has the same population density as Grand Rapids.
Okay.
So like literally almost the same. So just as a reference for, I don't know if anyone else who doesn't know what that city is, I'm sorry. Like, I guess think of a city of 200,000 people. That's about, Shangrao is like the same population density as that. So you can kind of almost think of it as like a city of that sort of size in terms of, it was like you want to convert it. So, but yeah, so like I saw just firsthand just how, like and I was a teacher at, like I said, so I was a teacher at this pretty much like a private type. It wasn't even really technically a school. It was more like an after school program. Like the kids would go to their schools, and then they came to us afterwards. But we were like serving all the rich kids. So I got to, I got to know these kids of very rich families. In fact, I was, we were invited to like a few parties of like, these rich families and stuff. And so I saw just like the decadence and wealth on one hand of these people. And then I would see every day while walking to work, while walking around, I would see the utter poverty of these people, of the other people, of everyone else. It's real. It's bad. And they're improving, mind you. Like they were still, they're getting richer compared to what they were before. Yeah. Like you see Shanghai in the 80s versus now. Like I've got to visit Shanghai. That's the future. Like I literally was like, okay, I just time traveled to the future. It was literally the first thought I had as soon as I saw Shanghai. I'm like, this is the future. It's the way the city is just so massive. There's so much wealth, so much consumerism, so much corporatism. I saw this firsthand, this American consumerism and corporatism, how it impacts other cultures. And it was just so overwhelming and just so like, my God, it's a disease. It's such a disease.
It's funny you say that because like, one of the things I always wind up looking at, and if you spend enough time on Twitter, you will find real video from these countries that you typically won't see real video. And, so anybody watching this that understands leftists, we don't believe in a classist system. I mean, we believe that everybody's equal. We believe that everybody's the same. Yeah. And raw video even coming out when the coronavirus outbreak was occurring. You saw capitalist China, big, shiny, bright craziness, and then you saw rural, poor China. And just the divide there, where you have the wealth and the poor.
Yeah, you want to know a fun fact about China? So, like, for example, in America, typically speaking, you'll have more crime and whatnot in your urban areas because that's where a lot of the poverty is. And then, rural or the countryside, as rest of the world refers to it, you'll see less crime. In China, it's actually opposite.
Okay.
Countryside and the rural area is actually where you see a lot of your crime. I mean, you still see some crime in the cities, but not nearly as much. Like, I literally remember being walking down your most sketch, just your sketchiest alleys. Like, think about in a movie, the sketchy alley someone walks down before they're about to be robbed.
Yep.
Really walking through those sort of those alleys in China, and after a while, you just get used to it. You're just like, I'm not going to get robbed here. What are you talking about? Even in Hangzhou, which is another city I had visited, me and a friend, a Russian/Ukrainian friend of mine that I had made, him and I would just walk down. We were walking down in the middle of the city 3 o'clock, 2 o'clock in the morning, and last thing we were worried about was getting robbed. That just doesn't happen, especially to some foreigners. As another interesting tidbit, for people to understand how weird of an experience I lived in, because a lot of people who teach English in China, they go to Shanghai, Beijing, Hangzhou, what are called the tier 1 cities, your biggest cities. The city I lived in, Shangrao, is considered a tier 3 city.
Okay.
And I was one of maybe a couple dozen foreigners that lived there. I mean that. Literally just maybe, not even maybe. A couple dozen at most. Yeah. Probably even less than that. Actual just foreigners who lived there. So 6 million Chinese people as opposed to a handful of foreigners. So yeah, you get some weird, you get that weird also experience of celebrity, because they're just Wagner, which is foreigner, in China. Okay. They would be like, Wagner. Get that all the time. I got stares all the time. Actually, funny enough, unless I was walking Noelle, my dog, then they would start staring they would still stare at me, but then they would also go to her. And I remember these mothers and stuff would always Google, which is dog in Chinese. Google. So I knew this is another good thing about having a dog. It takes the attention off of me. I don't need the attention all that time. I like attention and all that. Don't get me wrong. I like it, but after a while it gets exhausting. Especially I remember being at bars having these drunk ass Chinese dudes just hanging out, and so many of them trying to be the toxic masculinity. I remember a dude trying to me the arm, especially because I have a beard and all this, and at the time I still had my hair, but I was I'm a hairy dude. I'm what I look like your typical masculine macho dude to them. So they're always just trying to size me up and So and a lot of that also kind of helped me be God damn, this culture, the culture of just the toxic masculinity is real. It's a bad. And I remember, and also thinking, I remember being man, this is what women also must feel like, being just hit on by dudes just constantly all the fucking time.
Yep. I gotta imagine that's what it's probably like. Based on
I got a taste. I got a little. Nope, that's not good. I got a taste of that. Just a taste. Enough of a taste to be yeah. I have a whole new appreciation for that. So yeah,
So I guess to kind of wrap this all up, I mean, I got 5 or so minutes left. We try and keep these episodes within an hour. What is of course, Libertarian Party, leftists, we're still fighting for the ability to exist within it,
Oh yeah.
And with that, leftists in general, we're trying to fight to lay the groundwork and the foundation for what we seek to see within society. And what do you see as the path forward for not just leftists, but leftists within the Libertarian Party?
Ooh, that's a good question. So,
save the best one for last.
Yeah, got to put on my poli-sci cap for this because I'm trying to strategize. So, I mean, the thing is first of all, which a lot of the leftists already do very well, is they're very unapologetic and just real and authentic about like, this is who I am, this is what we do about. Luckily, I think social issues wise, especially, a lot of libertarians do already agree with us on a lot of that stuff, and especially comparatively, for example, like the Mises Caucus, we're very good, like, in those issues. Even your non-leftist libertarian probably are going to agree with us more. They may think a lot of them may think we go too far the other way, which we don't. But like, like they may think we go too far the other way, but I think they at least still appreciate like, okay, it's better to go too far that way than too far the other way. Like, so we have that going for us. That's one of the things we got to keep. But I think the big thing is just we just got to appeal to other leftists, and like essentially, I think we have to appeal to the other leftists in this country and let them know, like, hey, we have an opportunity, especially once we get ranked choice voting passed. Once we can make that into a thing, even just on the state level. Once we get, and even if we don't, we have an opportunity within the Libertarian Party to have the numbers to be able to push that party into a more leftist direction. So I think a lot of it is going to probably come from the outside, where we try to appeal to other, like if we can make enough noise to where enough leftists can recognize that we see what these guys are doing, and we see if we can join this caucus and not take over. I don't like using that terminology.
Yeah, I hate that. Our build. I like to say build. Build
yes, exactly. And we can build that apparatus. The Libertarian Party is uniquely qualified as a third party to be able to, especially on the local level, win elections. I mean, Greens can somewhat do it, but not like Libertarians.
Exactly.
And like, so if you really are sick of having to kowtow to the Democrats, which leftists are,
oh yeah,
there's a chance, especially on a local level. I even will dare say we can win. I think we can win congressional, senatorial, gubernatorial seats. I think we can even go that far. I mean, I like to be optimistic and even say like crazy situation president, but whatever. Even if we can't, for sure, a gubernatorial. I mean, remember, people have to forget. Jesse Ventura was a governor. He wanted to independent. Like,
exactly.
People forget this. Like,
oh yeah,
he did that. Like, mind you, Minnesota, whatever, silly state, but like.
And also, people forget Bernie Sanders technically an independent.
Yeah, he's technically independent. He's a senator. Mind you, it's Vermont, whatever, but still. The point is that this is possible. It can be done, and you can't undermine how important even winning yes, Justin Amash. I love Justin Amash. I respect him. Him and I have been Facebook friends for years. Him and I follow each other on Twitter. I respect the man. Obviously he didn't win as a libertarian. He was a Republican, then switched over.
Yep.
But like, that was still something. The fact that people still had to acknowledge that like libertarians exist.
Exactly.
That we're in Washington D.C. doing stuff. And, I remember one of the first things he did. One of his first bills, he was able to go to the left, AOC type people, and he got those people to sign on to his legislation, especially once I think he was free from the Republican label. It's probably easier for him because he's like, hey, I'm this other thing now. I'm not a Republican. What are you talking about? Let's do a bipartisan thing. This is technically bipartisan. I'm a party. Your guys are a party. So if we do this together, it's technically bipartisan.
Exactly.
And he had got so. But yeah, so like,
it's funny you say that. Building the coalitions, building the framework, building that groundwork to set us up for success. And I always say to people, and people within the DSA, people when I'm out doing activism work outside of the party, the Libertarian Party has its downsides. There's toxicity in this this party. And anybody that knows me and anybody that knows any of us that's on the left in the party fighting, we deal with some absolute bullshit. But if there's enough of us, we can help get rid of the problems and start actually working.
Well, because here's the thing: a lot of these people are like these very far right wing people. They're already scared to join the Libertarian Party because they already think it's too far left.
Yep.
And it's only because of the work of like the Mises Caucus, for example, that they're appealing to these far right people, and they're trying to make essentially. The Mises Caucus is doing clever stuff. I gotta acknowledge when my opponents are doing clever stuff because they're getting work done. They're getting recruiting people.
They are absolutely.
But I think we can do it better, especially now in this post-COVID. Well, now we're not quite post-COVID. We're still COVID.
When we get there.
When we get there, but especially right now in the post-COVID world, there's going to be more lefties than ever before. More people are waking up to this idea that socialism and communism are these evils. No. Most people are waking up and acknowledging that was just Republican, Red Scare, McCarthyism nonsense. And from the same, most people already acknowledge that the war on drugs was wrong. Well, those are the same people who brought you the Red Scare.
They're the same people. Made the textbooks.
Same people, same propaganda. Literally at the same time. They're literally saying commies are bad, don't smoke weed. They didn't hide this.
Before we close this up, I do have to say something. It's funny you bring that up, right? So, as much as I hate Mises, as much as I hate that caucus, I have to thank them for something because they are doing something that they don't realize. I don't think they realize is helping us. They are telling so many right-wingers that the Libertarian Party is a bunch of socialists that's going to just make us more appealing to the left once we get
please
out of there.
Please, because they're right. We are a bunch of socialists. That's what libertarianism was built on.
Yep.
That's another thing we have to put. Even if we do one, for example, within the party, within the Libertarian Party and ideology, if you want to recruit people within there, one of the things we have to dispel them about is this whole idea that the Rothbard and the Mises, that these were the originators of libertarianism, that they birthed libertarianism. And
Jacques did.
That was his name. I keep forgetting his name.
An anarcho-communist.
Yes, exactly. Yes, exactly. He was the dude that came up. He coined the term libertarian. He came up with it is an anarcho-communist. The green section, you would say, of that political compass.
Yep.
If you want to go by that silly thing, it is silly. It's ridiculous. But that is the place where libertarianism came from, and there's a reason why it came from there. It's because capitalism was not an invention. Is not a thing that fights against the state. It's not a thing that beats up the state. It's not a thing that rivals the state or anything. It's not a thing that brings freedom. No, it is a thing that is one with the state.
It's an arm of
together. Yes. It is as I like to call it, the fiscal arm of the government. And I was and that's another thing about me going to the left too. I was always pretty anti-corporation, anti-banks, and all this sort of stuff too. So I think that's another reason why the left appealed to me so easily too, is because I'm already anti those things. I always had to make the argument, no, it's cronyism, as opposed to free markets. I always had to make those distinctions. with the left, you don't make that distinction because that distinction is not really actually there. Like this idea that there's this that there's this free noble market, the noble free market that's going to bring us about freedom and Adam
The only
Smith and this
free market is the market where the worker is free. That's the only free market.
Exactly, and that comes from the left.
Yep,
it does. It just does. That's the thing. Like, there's a reason why McCarthyism happened. It's because socialism and communism threatens the powers that be.
Exactly.
And that's the reason, for example, why the USSR and China and these, other countries are the way they are is because they took the ring of power. If we want to use, the Lord of the Rings metaphor, they took that ring of power and instead of casting it into the fires, like they were supposed to, like Marx even said they were supposed to eventually, you're supposed to cast that into the fire. No, they decided to put it on. And as soon as they put it on, they're like, no,
they got their taste.
They got their taste. That's what statism poisons everything. That's ultimately what it comes down to. It poisons everything.
I seriously look forward, and as we've said throughout this podcast episode, I seriously look forward to the future for us as leftists within the party and with outside of it, because things are looking our way. The United States is finally starting to see the light and the cracks in the foundation of capitalism, which have turned into massive crevices. And I think it's going to be beautiful for leftists in general in this country within the next 10, 20 years.
Although I will say I do think one of the things that make me, for example, less maybe of the pragmatic sort that I used to be, is that I'm more of now we got to get this going quicker. We got to get going with this because, for example, I don't know. I have a suspicion when a lot of people say they're anarchists, they only mean so in the, like, I'm philosophically and idealistically an anarchist, but realistically, I think the state is just going to exist. That's not the sort of anarchist I am. And in fact, this is one of the reasons why I abandoned capitalism is because I am an anarchist. When I mean it, I mean it. Like, I mean, we need to be a state society as soon as we can. As soon as possible, we need to become, because the state has already made it possible for us to wipe ourselves out. Nuclear bombs, for example. That as soon as nuclear bombs came into the mix, that was the final straw of like the state needing to go away, because the longer the state stays around,
the more chance.
Yes, the more chance we're going to have nuclear annihilation, and the more chance we will wipe ourselves out. That is the reality we live in. And so it's no longer a matter of how are we going to work this out in a stateless society? How are we going to work that out? We can figure it out. We just
got to get the ball going.
Because if we don't, kablooey.
Yeah.
It's only a matter of time. That where Elon Musk takes us to space and we're his indentured servants forever. Is that or that happen? One of these things are going to happen.
Yeah, you mean Elon Musk getting his company town on Mars?
Yeah, essentially, right? And that's the thing. Like, I get it for all you people out there who are like, well, I have these heroes like Elon Musk. He was a hero of mine for a long time. I love the man. I was like, I used to worship the ground that man walked on. I get it. Like, he's so cool. He does cool stuff. He smoked weed with Joe Rogan. Man, he's like the best ever. No, he is going to try to own you. Yep. He's going to try to own you. And the thing is, he is a smart man. I don't deny that. I'm not going to pretend here like he's like some idiot. No, he is. He's a mad genius. Him and Jeff Bezos are competing about, who's going to get to be Lex Luthor. Like, that's what they're doing. Like, that's essentially what they're doing. They're trying to become, they're trying to be like, I'm Lex Luthor. No, I'm Lex Luthor. No, I'm Lex Luthor. That's what these billionaires are doing. That's why they all keep accumulating this money and stuff. They're rivaling each other. They're trying to, they're trying to be the top dog amongst.
Who's going to buy who?
Yeah, yeah.
Well, seriously, man. Got to wrap this up, but thank you for coming on. Thank you for being the first guest on Podquest the Bread, man. Awesome talk. And, I just look, like I said, I look forward to what we do within this party because we're going to raise hell. We're probably going to piss people off, but I think we're going to build a more coalition than we are those that we piss off.
Yes. And a lot of those people we do piss off eventually probably will see the light and realize like, oh, these dudes were onto something all along.
Absolutely. Just like we did.
Exactly. Well, because that's the thing. That's one thing why I say like we can recruit within the party, because a lot of these people, of that caucus, like the Libertarian Socialist Caucus and outright libertarians and blah blah blah, a lot of those people are former ANCAPs.
Yep.
Most of them are actually former ANCAPs. So, like I said, if we just dispel this idea that capitalism is the way to have freedom to rival the government, to fight the government, like if we dispel that nonsense from these people and let them, and because like already most capitalists admit this, like other than your Rothbards,
yep,
other than your ANCAPs, all your other capitalists agree, like, yeah, we need a state. So just acknowledge that those people are correct.
Yep.
And then for the minarchists, I guess you just have to convince them, like, hey, no, because nuclear bombs, man, or whatever, whatever you got to do.
Exactly.
Like, no, we don't care. You don't need the state. And like, because the state will always, if you give it an inch, a centimeter, it will go light years.
Yep.
That's how the state works.
Anyway, so I'm going to pull you off screen. We're going to close this out, hang out for a second, and we'll wrap this one up. Thank you so much for coming on, Logan. I'll talk to you in a second. Anytime, man. So that was Logan Fleckenstein. This is the Podquest the Bread, and this is what we're going to do. As I said, you can expect videos from me throughout the week, talking, 20, 30-minute long videos talking about leftist strategy, building the groundworks for leftism, reaching out to those who may not realize they're leftists in a way that will get them to maybe think about it. In the same way that people reached out to me, and in the same way that people reached out to Logan. And hopefully that will allow us to build these coalitions. And then once or twice a month, I'm going to sprinkle in little episodes like this, where we have a leftist activist, or we have a prominent leftist that's known by people on the show to chat and just talk about where we're headed. But with that being said, I got to close this one out, and I'm going to close it out how I always say. Thank you for watching the Podquest the Bread.